Welcome to the Crystal Self-Healer Podcast. I'm Carissa Weaver. On this podcast, we blend the magic of crystals with the science of psychology to help you break free from chaos, ditch the overwhelm, and master your emotions so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day. Get ready to unlock your intuition and restore your true power as we cover how you can transform your life using crystals and self-awareness. Are you ready to get started? All right, let's go. How often have you asked yourself, what is this crystal for? Or what crystal is for what? I get asked this question all the time, and I know that I used to ask the same question. Now, I want you to think about how many times that question was asked, and then you found yourself trapped in analysis paralysis. If you're wondering why your crystal and tarot practice isn't making progress, it isn't that you don't know enough. It's that you need to stop asking questions that shut you down. The quality of your question will direct the quality of the response you get. When a question is closed, think a question that sets up a yes-no answer. It doesn't allow for much elaboration. It's like dealing with kids. When you ask them how their day was, you get a grunt if you're lucky. I could tell you to simply adjust how you're asking the question, but there's nuance to it. So instead of asking how your day was, you may change it to, what did you do today? You'd think that this shift makes it open-ended, welcoming for more dialogue, but it's still a question that doesn't get you the answer you really want. This is essentially what you're doing when you ask the, what is this crystal for, or what crystal is for what? What I noticed when I habitually asked questions that prioritized crystal properties is that my crystal practice wasn't making progress. There are sneaky questions that sound open but stop you dead in your tracks because they require you to validate your answer before giving it, or they require you to really know your stuff. And when you're coming from the space of being the student, not feeling fully embodied in your knowledge, that gap is what triggers the shutting down. So is it any wonder that when you ask questions that rely heavily on knowledge you don't think you've fully mastered, you feel like you don't know what step to take or what crystal to use? Through my undergrad in psychology and subsequent certification in coaching, I noticed a common thread. When you ask better questions, you get better answers. And this can be best demonstrated by going back to the kids. What I found raising 3 kids was that by switching the question to more feeling-based questions, my kids answered questions more regularly, opened up more, and actually engaged in more conversations. And those questions were more like, what was the funniest thing you saw or heard today? What did you find most frustrating today? These questions allowed the kids to define the measurement using their own subjective scale. So there was no way for it to be a trick question meant to trap them in something they haven't mastered. To translate these questions into your crystal practice, you could try, what crystal do I find interesting? What crystal feels most supportive for? I think it's important to distinguish between absolute fact and commonly accepted properties. I'm not suggesting that any of the properties written about are incorrect, but I do want to delineate between what is true and accurate for a scribe and what is true and accurate for you. It's much like medication. A certain medication or drug may work wonders for one person, but have nasty side effects and minimal positive effect for another. It doesn't mean the drug or either person is wrong or absolutely right. It just means that the properties or ingredients in that drug don't work for both people. I want to invite you to think about your work with crystals in the same way. The minute you release the rigid belief that your practice has to look or be a certain way, or that the properties are something to be held as immutable, the more progress you make and the more confidence you have in what you are doing. One crystal that works perfectly here is Labradorite. Labradorite contains feldspar mineral, which is responsible for the colorful flashes you see in some cuts of the crystal. You can liken these flashes to the flashes of intuition or synchronicity that you will start to notice when you begin working with Labradorite. And while stepping into a new version of you can be a little overwhelming, Labradorite holds protective properties as well, so you'll never be energetically exposed when you're experimenting in your practice. I think it's fair to say that we all want to tap into and create magic with our crystal practice, and Labradorite holds the property of magic. The shift in the questions focuses you to use your own subjective measurements to validate against those regardless of the properties ascribed to any particular crystal in any particular book. It also allows for you to grow in how you work with each crystal. If a crystal felt aligned one day but didn't the next, that is okay. When you stop asking questions that prioritize the properties and focus on what supports you achieving your desired end result using measurements you've designated, your crystal practice becomes more personalized and flows more easily. Getting into the doing phase of your crystal practice can be the hardest step when you're stuck in overwhelm. That's why I created the Crystal Self-Healer Members Portal to focus on doing over more learning. The portal is about getting from the I've read about to the I do space of your practice. The integration and embodiment of everything you've been trying to master comes from the doing. And you can get that when you join me inside the Crystal Self-Healer Members Portal. Depending on where you are, there are 3 levels of support that help you go from I don't know to I know. Whether you start by simply receiving a collective healing, or you're ready for the deep work in mentorship calls, the goal is the same, shifting from studying to doing. Each month, we move through the lunar cycle together, setting intentions at the new moon using crystals aligned to the astrological energy. We perform ritual to build momentum at the first quarter, and we heal and release what no longer serves at the full moon, and nurture and tend to ourselves in the fourth quarter. It's not about learning more. It's about doing consistently in a way that becomes second nature. Take that first step in beginning your practice by going to my website, 3charmedgems.com, and come home to yourself through practice. Today's episode has been brought to you by Labradorite and Quality Questions. May we all ask questions that move us forward in our crystal practice. Blessed be, my friends. All right, my friends, that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you for joining me here today on the Crystal Self-Healer podcast. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review, and take the What Crystal is Best for You quiz linked in the show notes. Join me again next week as we continue to demystify crystals, how your brain works, and how you can use them so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day.